Let's talk about the atmospherics, Lisa. Here's who was in court with Donald Trump today. We'll just put it up, Little Roads Gallery, Alan Wilson, some people you haven't heard of, some congressmen, Andrew Clyde, insurrectionist Congressman Andrew Clyde. Alan Dershowitz, interesting, he was there. A Missouri Attorney General candidate was there. Bernie Kerik, who Donald Trump pardoned felon Bernie Kerik. Kash Patel, former chief of staff to the Secretary of Defense, who would probably be in the next administration. Vernon Jones, the sort of Democrat turned really right-wing, wacky Georgia Republican. And actor Chuck Zito, former president of the New York chapter of the Hells Angels. What was that about?
I have no idea what Chuck Zito was about. But, let's talk about the larger atmospherics. There was a moment last week, Joy, on Thursday, where the DA's office was complaining about the disruption caused by members of Trump's entourage basically coming in and out of the courtroom because they were having press availabilities outside during breaks and therefore would miss the beginning of the renewed session. And when they did that, Todd Blanche said, hey, look, I can't control these people. They're just members of the public. I think anybody who has watched the surrogates operation over the last several days understands that this is not just some coincidental gathering of members of the public, but a very tightly coordinated surrogates operation in coordination with the Trump campaign itself. They are selecting who comes to court every day. They have a sense down to the seat of how many people they can fit in their first two rows of the gallery that are assigned to them, and they fit each and every one of them. And they are accomplishing certain objectives each and every time that they call upon people to come here. Sometimes they're asking for people, for example, who are state attorneys general or candidates for attorney general. But that guy who came today, Will Scharf, for example, that you mentioned, he's not just a candidate for Missouri attorney general. He's one of Trump's appellate lawyers. So there are lots of people there wearing multiple hats, but they're all hats that fit into the MAGA world. This is not some disparate assembly of people who just happen to like Donald Trump. So I'm glad that you called attention to that.
And if I could just take you into the courtroom today, please. Sorry, Joy. As I'm sitting there, and this is becoming a daily occurrence, we can hear Trump in the hallway, and so we all turn to then see him walk in. And then today, people just kept coming and coming, and it was like, oh, there's Alan Dershowitz. There is Chuck Zito, who was the Hells Angels, led the New York chapter of the Hells Angels, and they just kept coming and coming to the point there wasn't enough room for them to sit. And then it's left up to Boris Epstein, one of Trump's legal advisors, to play sort of party planner, party seater, as he then finds more room for them up the end of the courtroom. And to the extent that today they even didn't have enough room to accommodate all of them. So it's become just this circus every day. And you can see that Mershon is growing tired of it, although he hasn't made any kind of order about it. But it is becoming a running spectacle day in, day out. It's almost like, which member of the wannabe Veep squad are we going to get today? And today we were overblown with wannabes.
They also often dress alike. They dress like Donald Trump. Kash Patel, let's play Kash Patel today. He wasn't dressed alike today, weirdly enough. Go ahead. Here's Kash.